They had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across half the galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of species. Some they made into slaves, others they simply destroyed. They believed they were the greatest civilization in existence. They believed no one could stop them. Then they met humanity. The first contact happened near a small yellow star. A scout ship found a human colony on a rocky planet. The commander sent the usual message, surrender or die. The humans sent back a different kind of message. They sent missiles. That was the beginning of a war no one expected. They thought the war would last a few months. Humans were young, their ships were small, their technology was basic, but humans did not fight like other species. They did not run when they were losing. They did not surrender when they were surrounded. They fought harder. They fought dirtier. They invented new weapons in the middle of battles. They turned their own damaged ships into bombs. 18 months passed. They had lost more soldiers fighting humans than they had lost in the previous 500 years. The High Matriarch, ruler of the entire Dominion, called her advisors to the Crystal Palace on Prime. "How do we end this?" she asked. Her advisors had no good answers. They could win the war, but it would cost them too much. Other species were watching. If they looked weak, rebellions would start across the empire. One old advisor spoke up. "There is an ancient tradition," he said, "a political marriage. We offer peace through union. We ask the humans to send a male to marry into the royal family. This gives us time to rebuild our fleets. When we are ready, we break the treaty and finish what we started." The High Matriarch smiled. It was a cold smile. "And which of my daughters will take this human husband?" "Princess," the advisor said. "She is the youngest, she is clever, she can control a simple human male." The offer was sent to the human coalition. To everyone's surprise, the humans accepted. 3 months later, a single human ship landed on Prime. The entire court gathered to see the human who would become a prince of the Dominion. They expected someone soft, someone eager to please, someone they could easily control. The ship's door opened, and Commander Cole stepped out. He was tall for a human. His dark hair was cut short in a military style. He wore a formal black uniform with medals on his chest, but it was his face that made the nobles whisper. Scars marked his jaw and neck. One of his eyes was slightly different from the other, a sign of battlefield surgery, and his eyes themselves held something they had never seen in a conquered species. Those eyes held no fear. They held no submission. They held the cold, patient look of a predator studying its prey. Princess stood at the front of the crowd. She was beautiful by standards. Her skin was pale blue, and her eyes were like purple jewels. Silver patterns decorated her face, marking her as royalty. She had prepared herself to meet a primitive creature she would have to train like a pet. Instead, she felt a strange chill run down her spine when Cole looked at her. He walked forward and stopped in front of the High Matriarch. He bowed, but not deeply, just enough to show respect, not enough to show submission. "I am Commander Cole of the Human Coalition," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "I come in the name of peace between our peoples." The High Matriarch studied him. "You are a soldier," she said. "We expected a diplomat." "I am what humanity chose to send," replied. "I hope that does not disappoint." There was something in his words, something hidden. The matriarch felt it, but she could not name it. She dismissed the feeling. He was just one human. What could one human do? "You will marry my daughter in 3 days," she announced. "Until then, you will learn our customs. You will learn our language. You will learn your place." Smiled. It was a polite smile, but it did not reach his eyes. "I am eager to learn everything about your people," he said. "Everything." The wedding was a grand ceremony. Thousands of nobles watched as Princess took a human as her husband. Many of them laughed behind their hands. The princess, married to a primitive ape from a backwater planet. It was almost too funny. Cole played his part perfectly. He spoke the ritual words. He wore the ceremonial robes. He let lead him through the ancient dances. He looked like a man happy to be where he was. But Princess noticed things. She noticed how his eyes moved constantly, studying every door, every guard, every shadow. She noticed how he memorized the layout of the palace in just 2 days. She noticed how he asked innocent questions that somehow revealed important information. On their wedding night, she confronted him. "You are not what you pretend to be," she said. Stood by the window looking out at the alien stars. "Neither are you, princess," he said quietly. "Neither is this marriage, neither is this peace." Felt anger rise in her chest. "You dare accuse us of deception." Turned to face her. The polite mask was gone. What remained was the face of a man who had fought in trenches, who had held dying friends, who had done terrible things to survive. "I accuse no one," he said. "I simply observe. Your mother's shipyards are working day and night. Your empire is gathering resources from every corner of its territory. You are not preparing for peace. You are preparing for a war that will exterminate my species." Said nothing, she could not deny it. "I was not sent here to be your pet," continued. "I was sent here because humanity does not trust your peace. I was sent here to watch, to learn, to prepare." "Prepare for what?" asked. Cole smiled again. This time the smile was different. It was the smile of a wolf that had been invited into the sheep's den. "For whatever comes next," he said. "Your mother made a mistake, princess. She thought she was getting a hostage. Instead, she got me. And I was born from the rage of a species that has never learned how to surrender." He turned back to the window. "The stars are beautiful tonight," he said calmly. "I wonder how many of them will burn before this is over." Princess did not sleep that night. For the first time in her life, she felt something she had never felt before. She felt afraid of the future. 6 months passed after the wedding. The court grew comfortable with the human prince. He was quiet. He was polite. He learned their language perfectly. He attended every ceremony and dinner. He never raised his voice. He never caused trouble. The nobles began to joke about him. They called him the tame ape. They said Princess had trained him well. They laughed at how easy it was to control a human. They were fools. Cole was fighting a war, but it was not a war of ships and weapons. It was a war of information. Every day he watched and listened. Every night he wrote reports in a code that no could break. He hid these reports in ordinary gifts that he sent back to Earth. A decorative vase, a piece of jewelry, a bottle of alien wine. Each one carried secrets in its molecular structure. The human coalition received everything: fleet positions, defense codes, political secrets, the locations of weapons factories, the names of corrupt officials. Every piece of information that could find he sent home. But information was only part of his mission. The palace had thousands of servants. Most of them were not. They were a species the Dominion had conquered 300 years ago. They had gray skin and 4 arms. They were smaller than the nobles treated them like furniture. They did not notice them. They did not speak to them. They did not thank them. Noticed them, spoke to them, thanked them. At first the servants were suspicious. No noble had ever been kind to them, but was patient. He learned their names. He asked about their families. He listened to their stories. He treated them like people, not like tools. Slowly, they began to trust him. An old servant named Al became his closest contact. Al had served in the palace for 50 years. He knew every secret passage. He knew every scandal. He knew which nobles were loyal and which ones were scheming against the throne. "Why do you care about us?" Al asked one night. "You are married to a princess. You live in luxury. Why do you waste time with servants?" Looked at the old with serious eyes. "Where I come from," he said, "we have a saying. The strength of a nation is not measured by its palaces. It is measured by how it treats the weakest among its people." Al was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "They have forgotten that we exist. They have forgotten that we watch. They have forgotten that we remember." "What do you remember?" asked. "Everything," Al said. "We remember when we were free. We remember the war that took our freedom. We remember every insult, every beating, every one of our people who died in their mines and factories. We remember it all." Nodded slowly. "And if someone gave you the chance to be free again?" Al's 4 hands trembled. "We would take it," he whispered. "We would take it with both hands and never let go." That night began building a second network. The first network sent information to Earth. The second network connected him to the resistance that had been hiding in the shadows for 3 centuries. They had never had hope before. Now they had a human who promised them something better. Meanwhile, Princess watched her husband with growing confusion. She had expected him to be miserable. She had expected him to beg for comfort, for attention, for her approval. Instead, he seemed perfectly content. He smiled at dinner parties. He made polite conversation with nobles who insulted him behind his back. He spent hours in the palace library, reading about history and culture. What was he planning? She tried to find out. She had servants follow him, but the servants who followed him were, and they reported nothing unusual. She did not realize that those same servants were now loyal to, not to her. One evening, she decided to confront him directly. She found him in their private garden, sitting under a tree with purple leaves. He was reading a book about ancient military campaigns. "You are too calm," she said. "It is not natural. You should be angry or sad or afraid, but you are none of these things. What are you hiding?" "Close the book. I am hiding many things," he said honestly. "But so are you, so is your mother, so is this entire empire. We are all hiding from the truth." "What truth?" "The truth that this peace is a lie." Stood up and faced her. "Your mother is building 300 new warships in secret shipyards on the far side of the empire. Your military is training a special force designed to fight in Earth's atmosphere. Your scientists are developing a virus that only affects human biology." Felt her heart stop. Those were the Dominion's most protected secrets. Even she only knew pieces of the full plan. "How do you know this?" she demanded. "Because I am very good at listening," said, "and because the people you ignore are very good at watching." He stepped closer to her. There was no anger in his voice, only a terrible calm. "Your mother plans to break the treaty in 2 years. She plans to exterminate humanity. Every man, every woman, every child. She wants to wipe us from the galaxy so completely that no one will even remember we existed." Could not deny it. She had heard her mother discuss these plans. "What will you do?" she asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I will stop her," said simply. "I will stop her or I will die trying. But before I die, I will make sure your empire pays a price it will never forget." He reached out and gently touched her face. The gesture was soft, but his words were hard as steel. "You have a choice to make, Princess. You can stand with your mother and watch your people burn, or you can stand with me and help build something better from the ashes. But you must choose soon. The clock is ticking and time is running out for everyone." He walked past her toward the palace. "Think carefully," he said over his shoulder, "because I do not make this offer twice." Princess stood alone in the garden for a long time. Above her, the stars shone cold and distant. Somewhere out there, a young species was preparing for the fight of its life, and she had to decide if she would help destroy them or save them. For the first time in her life, she understood what her mother had failed to understand. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not simple. Humanity was a species that had crawled out of darkness and learned to build fire. And fire, once started, was very hard to control. She made her decision that night. She would help the human, not because she loved him, not because she believed in his cause. She would help him because she wanted to survive, and survival meant standing on the side that would win. The assassination attempt came on a night that should have been peaceful. It was the first anniversary of the wedding. The palace held a grand celebration. Nobles danced under crystal chandeliers. Musicians played ancient songs. Servants carried trays of expensive food and drink. The High Matriarch made a speech about unity and peace. It was all a performance. Everyone knew the truth, but they smiled and pretended anyway. And returned to their chambers late at night. The halls were quiet. Most of the palace was asleep. 2 guards stood outside their door as always. Those guards were dead before and reached the hallway. Their bodies lay on the cold stone floor, purple blood pooling around them. Stopped walking. His entire body changed in an instant. The polite husband disappeared. The diplomat vanished. What remained was something else entirely. "Get behind me," he said quietly. His voice was flat and cold. Before could respond, the door to their chambers burst open. 3 figures rushed out. They were dressed in black, carrying curved blades that glowed with poison. Blade masters, the most deadly warriors in the Dominion. They moved fast, faster than any human should be able to react. Was faster. He grabbed the first assassin's arm and twisted. The sound of breaking bone filled the hallway. The blade fell from the assassin's hand, caught it in midair and drove it into the assassin's throat in one smooth motion. The second assassin slashed its chest, stepped sideways, letting the blade pass within inches of his body. He grabbed the assassin's head with both hands and twisted sharply. The assassin's neck snapped like dry wood. The third assassin hesitated. It was a tiny hesitation, barely a heartbeat, but it was enough. Picked up the second fallen blade and threw it. The blade spun through the air and buried itself in the assassin's eye. The body hit the floor before it could make a sound. 40 seconds, 3 of the deadliest warriors in the Empire, all dead. Princess stood frozen against the wall. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had seen violence before. She had watched executions. She had witnessed battles from the safety of command ships. But she had never seen anything like this. Stood in the middle of the carnage, breathing hard. His formal robes were soaked with purple blood. His eyes were wild and fierce. For a moment, he did not look human. He looked like something ancient and terrible, something that belonged in nightmares. Then the wildness faded, took a deep breath. When he turned to face, his eyes were calm again, but she had seen what lay beneath the surface. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. She could not find words. Looked down at the bodies around him. "They were sent by House," he said. "A rival faction. They see me as a contamination of royal blood. They hope to kill me and blame it on human agents. Your mother would have had an excuse to break the treaty immediately." Finally found her voice. How did you do that?" Walked toward her slowly. He stopped a few steps away, giving her space. "Humans are not born peaceful," he said. "We are born screaming. We are born covered in blood. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators hunted us. Diseases attacked us. The weather froze us and burned us. Our own planet was our enemy." He held up his blood-covered hands. "And we won. We killed the predators. We cured the diseases. We conquered the weather. We fought our way to the top of our world with nothing but our brains and our rage. Peace is something we choose. It is not our nature." Pressed herself against the wall. "You are monsters," she whispered. "No," said. He shook his head slowly. "We are survivors. There is a difference. Monsters kill for pleasure. Survivors kill because they must. I take no joy in what I just did, but I will do it again and again if that is what it takes to protect my people." He reached out his hand. It was still wet with blood, but his touch was gentle as he lifted her chin. "Your mother started this war. She thought she could exterminate my species and suffer no consequences. She was wrong. Humanity does not die quietly. We do not accept our extinction. We fight. We rage. We burn everything around us before we fall." He released her chin and stepped back. "I gave you a choice before," he said. Stand with your mother or stand with me. You have been giving me information for months now, but you are still holding back. You are still hopping. You can survive no matter who wins." His eyes hardened. "That time is over. After tonight, everything changes. Your mother's enemies within the court will see this as a sign of weakness. The resistance is ready to move. The human coalition has received everything they need. The war begins again very soon." Looked at the dead assassins on the floor. She looked at the blood on her husband's hands. She looked at the fierce determination in his eyes. And she understood something her mother had never understood. Humanity was not fighting for territory. Humanity was not fighting for resources. Humanity was fighting for survival. And a species fighting for survival would do anything, sacrifice anything, destroy anything to stay alive. "What do you need from me?" she asked. Smiled. It was not a kind smile, but it was a real smile. "I need the access codes to your mother's private communications network. I need the locations of the secret shipyards. I need the names of every noble who is loyal to the throne and every noble who secretly hates it. I need everything." Closed her eyes. She was about to betray her mother. She was about to betray her people. She was about to change the history of the galaxy. "I will give you everything," she said, "but promise me one thing." "What?" "When this is over, when my mother falls, spare the innocent. Spare the children. Spare those who had no choice in this war." Nodded slowly. "I am a soldier," he said, "not a butcher. I will destroy those who threaten my people, but I will not become the monster your mother is. You have my word." Opened her eyes and looked at her husband. Her human husband. The man born from a species that had learned to turn rage into power and ingenuity into weapons. "Then let us begin," she said. That night everything changed. The quiet war became a real war, and the galaxy would never be the same. They broke the treaty on a cold morning in the Earth month of March. 300 warships jumped out of hyperspace above 3 human colony worlds at the same moment. The High Matriarch had planned the attack for 2 years. She had built her fleet in secret. She had trained her soldiers in hidden bases. She believed the humans would be shocked and helpless. She was wrong. The human defenders were waiting, not with small defense forces, but with battle fleets that should not have existed. Ships that had been built in secret shipyards on hidden asteroids. Weapons that had been designed using stolen technology. Soldiers who had trained for exactly this moment. The attack fleet walked into a trap. In the first 6 hours, the Dominion lost 120 ships. The human defenders used tactics they had never seen before. They used small, fast ships loaded with explosives to ram into larger vessels. They deployed minefields that appeared from nowhere. They jammed communications so completely that admirals could not talk to their own captains. By the end of the first day, the attack had become a retreat. The High Matriarch received the news in her throne room. Her face turned pale with shock and rage. "How?" she demanded. "How did they know? How were they prepared?" Her advisors had no answers, but the truth was simple. Cole had sent them everything, every battle plan, every ship design, every communication code. For 2 years, the human coalition had known exactly what they were planning, and they had prepared. But the disaster in space was only the beginning. On 17 worlds, they rose up. It started with small things. Power stations lost power, water systems stopped working, transportation networks collapsed, factories shut down. They did not understand what was happening at first. These systems were controlled by servants. Why would the servants sabotage their own masters? Then they stopped pretending to be servants. 300 years of anger exploded all at once. Workers attacked their overseers with tools and stolen weapons. Servants opened doors for resistance fighters. Engineers turned the machines of the Dominion against their masters. On the industrial world of 7, 50,000 workers took control of the planet's main weapons factory. On the agricultural world of 12, farmers burned the food supplies that fed the Imperial Army. On the mining world of 9, miners collapsed the tunnels that produced the rare metals needed for warships. The Dominion suddenly found itself fighting on two fronts. The humans were attacking from outside. They were attacking from inside, and both attacks were perfectly coordinated. The High Matriarch ordered her military commanders to crush the rebellion immediately, but they could not. Too many soldiers were already in space, fighting the humans. Too many resources were already destroyed. Too many systems were already broken. One commander dared to speak the truth. "We are losing on every front," he said. "The humans knew our plans before we executed them. The uprising happened at exactly the worst moment. This is not coincidence. Someone is coordinating these attacks, someone on the inside." The High Matriarch's eyes went wide. Her thoughts turned to the human living in her own palace, the human married to her own daughter, the human she had believed was a simple, controllable fool. She sent soldiers to capture Cole immediately. They found his chambers empty. They found Princess' chambers empty too. All they found was a small message carved into the wall in the language. The message said, "You should have studied our history." The High Matriarch screamed with rage. She ordered every ship, every soldier, every resource to hunt down the human and her traitor daughter. But it was too late, and had escaped through the secret passages that only the servants knew. They were already off-world, traveling toward the human fleet. Meanwhile, the war continued to turn against the Dominion. Human ships pushed deeper into space. They did not simply destroy military targets. They attacked the structures of power itself. They freed slave camps. They broadcast messages to every conquered species in the Dominion, promising freedom to those who rose up against their masters. Other species began to answer the call. The Ani, conquered 50 years ago, attacked their governors. The conquered 200 years ago sabotaged supply lines. The conquered before any living could remember opened their planet's defenses and welcomed human liberators with open arms. The Dominion was crumbling. In the command center of the human flagship, Admiral stared at the tactical displays with a mixture of wonder and respect. "One man," she said, "one man spent 2 years inside their palace. He mapped their entire power structure. He built an alliance with He turned their own servants into their destroyers. I have never seen anything like this in my entire career." Her aide nodded. "Commander Cole understood something we never fully appreciated," he said. "They treated their conquered species like objects. They never imagined those objects might have feelings, might have memories, might have dreams of revenge." Admiral shook her head slowly. "They thought they were inviting a hostage into their home. Instead, they invited a revolution." She turned back to the tactical display. A dozen worlds were now in open rebellion. The Dominion fleet was scattered, trying to fight enemies on all sides. The war that was supposed to exterminate humanity had become a war that might exterminate the Dominion instead. "Send Commander Cole a message when he arrives," she said. "Tell him the Coalition owes him a debt we can never repay, and ask him what he needs for the final phase." Far across the galaxy, Cole and Princess approached the human fleet in a stolen transport ship. Sat in the pilot's seat, watching the stars stream past. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with determination. "The final phase," said. "What is the final phase?" Did not look away from the stars. "Your mother still lives," he said. "As long as she lives, she will keep fighting. She will sacrifice every soldier, every ship, every planet to win. She will burn the galaxy before she admits defeat." "So the final phase is?" "The final phase is making sure she cannot fight anymore." Finally turned to look at his wife. His eyes were hard as iron. "The final phase is ending this war, once and for all." Felt a chill run down her spine. She had chosen her side. She had made her decision. But in moments like this, she remembered that she had married something more than a man. She had married a force of nature, and forces of nature could not be stopped. The war did not end with a great battle. It ended with a single man walking through a dark hallway. Cole moved through the crystal palace of Prime like a ghost. The guards who should have stopped him looked the other way. The doors that should have been locked opened silently. The alarm systems that should have screamed stayed quiet. They had prepared this path for years. Every servant who had ever been insulted, beaten, or ignored had become a piece of plan. Now they fulfilled their purpose. They cleared the way for the human to reach the heart of the Dominion. Princess walked beside him. She had returned to her home world not as a princess, but as a traitor in the eyes of her people. She did not care anymore. She had seen too much. She understood too much. There was no going back. Outside the palace, the skis burned. Human ships filled the space above Prime. Rebels controlled the streets of the capital city. The great dominion that had ruled for 10,000 years was falling apart in a matter of weeks. Stopped in front of a massive door made of crystal and gold. The throne room, the center of power for half the galaxy. "Are you ready?" he asked. She nodded. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Let us finish this." Pushed open the door. The throne room was empty. No guards, no nobles, no advisors, just one figure sitting on the great crystal throne, staring at the door with eyes full of hatred. The High Matriarch had not run. She had not hidden. She sat on her throne in full royal dress, wearing the crown of her ancestors. She looked like a queen, but she was a queen with no kingdom left. "So," she said as approached, "the pet has come to bite its master." Walked down the long hall until he stood at the base of the throne steps. Stayed behind him, watching her mother with eyes that held no love. "I was never your pet," said calmly. "I was never your hostage. I was a weapon sent into the heart of your empire. You invited me in. You gave me access. You let me walk freely through your halls. Every mistake was yours." The High Matriarch gripped the arms of her throne. "You are one human, one primitive creature from a primitive world. How did you do this? How did you destroy everything we built?" Smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was almost sad. "Your people made a mistake that many powerful civilizations make," he said. "You studied our ships. You studied our weapons. You studied our bodies and our technology, but you never studied our history." He took one step up toward the throne. "If you had studied our history, you would have learned that humans have overthrown every tyrant who tried to rule them. Every empire that oppressed us fell. Every dictator who thought he was invincible died alone and forgotten. We do not submit. We do not surrender. We resist until we win or until we die." He took another step. "You thought you could exterminate us because we are young, because we are weak, because we are small. But we have been fighting for survival since we lived in caves. We fought ice ages and plagues and predators and each other. We crawled out of every disaster stronger than before. Your empire is old. Ours is young. But age means nothing when facing a species that was born fighting." He took the final step and stood directly in front of the throne. "I gave your servants hope. I gave your slaves weapons. I gave your enemies information. I did not create the anger that destroyed your empire. The anger was already there. You created it over 10,000 years of cruelty. I simply lit the match." The High Matriarch stood up from her throne. Even now, even defeated, she was taller than him. She was older than him. She had ruled when his grandparents were not yet born. "What do you want?" she asked. "My death, my humiliation, what payment will satisfy your human rage?" Shook his head. "I want you to abdicate. I want you to surrender to the human coalition. I want you to sign treaties that give independence to every species you have conquered. I want the Dominion to end, not in blood, but in law." The High Matriarch stared at him. "And if I refuse?" Looked at her with steady eyes. "Then your dynasty ends tonight, not just you. Your entire bloodline, Your name will be erased from history. Your empire will be remembered as a cautionary tale. Nothing will remain but ashes. He glanced back at. Your daughter made the smart choice. She chose to live. She chose to build something new from the ruins of something old. You can make the same choice. Or you can die on this throne and nothing you ever built will survive you. The High Matriarch was silent for a long moment. Her eyes moved from to her daughter, the daughter she had raised to rule an empire, the daughter who now stood with the enemy. You chose him over me, she said over your own blood. Stepped forward, her voice was calm and clear. I chose survival, Mother. The same thing you always taught me to value. You just never imagined I would survive without you. The silence stretched on. Outside, the sounds of fighting grew quieter. The war was ending, one way or another. Finally, the High Matriarch closed her eyes. Her shoulders dropped. The strength seemed to drain from her body. I will abdicate, she whispered. I will sign your treaties, the Dominion will end. Nodded, there was no triumph in his face, no joy, only exhaustion and relief. Thank you, he said simply. The next few weeks passed in a blur of negotiations and ceremonies. The High Matriarch signed document after document, giving up territories her ancestors had held for thousands of years. They declared their independence. Dozens of other species did the same. The map of the galaxy changed overnight. At the final ceremony, diplomats from 100 worlds gathered to witness the birth of a new galactic order. Not an empire ruled by one species, a coalition of equals, bound by choice instead of chains. A diplomat from a distant empire approached during the celebration. Your people are terrifying, he said. You are young, you are small, yet you brought down the greatest power in the galaxy. How? Looked out at the stars, the same stars he had watched from his prison that had never been a prison, the same stars his ancestors had dreamed about for thousands of years. We are not terrifying, he said. We are survivors. Everything else is just a consequence of that. He turned back to the diplomat with eyes that had seen too much. Remember that the next time someone thinks about starting a war with humanity, we do not start fights, but we finish them, always. Years later, they told stories to their children about the Great Liberation. They spoke of a human who came to the enemy's palace as a prisoner and left as a conqueror. They spoke of rage turned into strategy and patience turned into victory. And across the galaxy, a new proverb spread among all species who heard the story. Never corner a human. They do not know how to surrender. They only know how to make you regret the fight. Cole lived the rest of his life in peace. He and built a small home on a quiet human colony world. They raised children who belonged to two species and inherited the strength of both. Sometimes, late at night, would stand on his porch and look up at the stars. He would remember the war. He would remember the blood. He would remember the choices he had made and the prices he had paid. And he would smile, because humanity had survived, again. And that was all that mattered.